Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, this is Lethal Sheriff here. Once again, we're diving into the killer's backstories. This is part 3, and yeah, I hope you are enjoying these. And if you'd like me to do the survivors, just let me know down in the comments. Right, so let's jump into our first killer of the video, which is the hag. So Lisa Sherwood grew up in a quiet town. The people of the village were kind and the elders helped settle their disputes and keep the old traditions alive. Lisa was particularly fond of the charms they taught her to draw for safety and good fortune. One night, as she was walking home through the woods, a terrible storm struck without warning. In the slick, wet darkness, she lost her footing and struck her head. Slipping in and out of consciousness, she watched dark shapes approach between the trees. Soon they were close enough for her to make out their evil, hungry grins. They kept her chained to the wall in a flooded cellar. Through the gloom she could see others whose open wounds swarmed with flies. They did not survive long once the cannibals began carving bites from their bodies with their rusted blades, but somehow Lisa persisted. Starved and mutilated, her gaunt arms became loose in their shackles. She pulled, and the metal tore through skin and muscle until she was free. Her flesh oozed vicious yellow pus, and bones were visible beneath gangrenous wounds. She could go no farther. Delirious, she thought of home, the thought of the elders. She traced the symbols they had taught her. A dark hunger stirred inside her. It yearned for blood. She chose vengeance. The police search eventually brought them to the old house in the swamp. Its inhabitants had been dismembered and devoured. The elders' charms were scrawled in blood on the floor. Lisa's body was never found. Right, on to our next killer. It is the Doctor. Right, let's get into it. Showing exceptional aptitude in physiology. Sorry if my English is not very good. Herman was handpicked for special training in an advanced neuroscience program located in a secret black site facility in Illinois, known as the Leary Memorial Institute. Really a front for the CIA. This is where Herman met Dr. Otto Stamper, where under his guidance, Herman began to use strange and ever-increasingly vicious methods to extract information from prisoners sent to the Institute, which was also a covert prison and re-educational center for whoever was in the USA's current nemesis. His liberal use of violent electroshock therapy revealed dramatic results, and severe threats to national security were uncovered. Over the years, Herman became known as the Doctor, and no one ever questioned if he had even held a medical certificate, or even what happened to the prisoners after they had given up their information. It was only after the Leary Memorial Institute went silent for a week that the true horror was finally discovered. The personnel, patients, and prisoners were all found dead with all types of head trauma. All personnel and prisoners' bodies were unaccounted for, including Dr. Otto Stamper, but no sign of Herman, the Dr. Carter. Yeah, when you're playing with him, the laugh is very unnerving. He does that a lot, especially when he zaps survivors. Alright, on to our next killer, which is the cannibal. Right, let's get into it. Whether killers perform their heinous acts by the compulsions of their diseased minds, or if they are forced into them by external pressures, has long been a matter of debate. But for one killer, nature and nurture are inextricably linked. Leatherface kills not from a desire to exert his will over others, to satisfy carnal urges, or even to quiet the voices in his head. His kills He kills because he is scared. Scared that others will hurt him, scared that his family will be displeased with him, scared that their shared willingness to eat human flesh will be discovered. He does as he is told, his family loves him, and that is all that matters. Outsiders are a threat, and threats need to be dealt with. Like those kids that came into the house uninvited, walked in like they owned the place, looked around the house trying to find out his family's secrets, no doubt, but Leatherface dealt with them, protected his family just as he had been taught. He is not just protector, he has many roles, and each role has its own face. He serves dinner, cares for the family, dresses well when they eat. His grandpa and Maya used to care for them, but grandpa is old now, and she has been still for a while, so Leatherface and his brothers had to take over. Family is everything to him. Family is security and safety. But even though he did his best, one of the kids got away. He tried to stop her, chasing after her as fast as he could, but she had help. Another outsider driving a truck. The evil trucker killed his brother, ran him over like he was a possum. In a fury, Leatherface leapt at him, the saw ready to avenge his family, but the trucker was too quick. He knocked Leatherface aside and turned his own saw against him. As he watched the outsiders driving away, the rage, grief and pain combined within the worry about what would happen to his family now. They would surely return with the police, and the police would take his brothers, his grandpa. Without them, what would he do? Without their commands, he would wither and die. As his world collapsed, Leatherface spun in circles, swinging the saw all around, trying to fight off the myriad external threats that surrounded him. Then another feeling overtook him. It came from outside his vision, crawling over his skin with cold dread. He realized that no matter what outsiders could do to him, there was something worse, something bigger that lived in the shadows. He was filled with a terror unlike any he'd ever felt before, but it was almost comforting, like the fear he'd felt with his family, the fear of disappointing them. He was brought to a place that was familiar but unknowable, and he instinctively knew what he had to do. He couldn't fail it, the way he had his family. Outsiders would come, but he would use his skills to overcome any threats. There would be screaming, but he could make the world quiet again, until the only sound remaining was the blessed howl of the saw. Let the outsiders come. If I'm correct, they actually read a bit of that story in the trailer for Leatherface as well, which is really interesting. But it's good to read it again and get familiar with it. Right, we're going to do one more killer, which is the Nightmare. Since the Nightmare has come out, they've actually buffed him a little bit. Before, he would be invisible and pull survivors into Dream, but now all survivors see him, and he can now teleport to generators, and he can place down either pallets, dream pallets, or dream snares. So he's a very hard killer, but once you master him, he is a lot of fun. Alright, let's get into his backstory. Even while he lived, Freddy Krueger was a creature of nightmares for those who truly knew him. Hiding behind a mask of warmth and friendliness, Freddy's actual temperament was known only to his victims. When those victims were finally heard, the parents of Springwood tracked Freddy down and took the law into their own hands. They fought fire and rid them of a monster that night, that their children were finally safe, but evil as strong as his as a way of surviving. Years passed, the horror was buried, the victims mercifully forgot. Then somehow Freddy returned, and dreams became nightmares once again. Freddy focused his anger on those he had felt had wronged him, building up to his one true obsession, Nancy Holbrook. But he underestimated her strength and resourcefulness. Together with her friend Quentin, she managed to weaken Freddy, mutilating him and leaving him for dead once more. Death didn't want Freddy the first time he encountered it. Why did they think it would take him now? He emerged once more, consumed with vengeance. Then he turned his sights on the boy who had blocked his path to Nancy, his number one. Freddy invaded Quentin's dreams, terrorizing him night after night, until his strength and defences would be at their lowest. When the time was right, he forced the boy to return to the dark reflection of Batham Preschool. Here he would have his final revenge. Freddy stalked the boy through the school's halls. He took his time, savouring every moment of the hunt. This was what he enjoyed the most, the smell of their sweat in the air, the ragged gasps of their terrified breath. They were his to play with. This was the boy, at the end of a long corridor, too tired and scared to run anymore. Resigned to his fate, Freddy closed in, arms wide, claws raking the wall. Their tips traced along a pipe, the metallic shrieking only adding to the boy's apprehension. A shower of sparks rained in the ground and into the liquid that covered the tiled floor. A blue flame blossomed and quickly engulfed the room. Excuse me. The boy took flight as Freddy burst from the flames in a fury. Rooms and walls raced past in a blur until they were in Freddy's basement. There would be no escape from here. Slowly Freddy closed in on the boy. His fear was so strong now that Freddy could almost taste it, but his eyes burned with a defiant hatred that was almost admirable. Freddy drew back his claws. Then Freddy felt another pressure with him. Something old, powerful and dark. A miasma enveloped him, and the only sensation was a sound like wooden beams flexing and creaking in the distance. The echoing groan of metal crushed against metal. Something arcane and unknowable, halfway between language and pure terror. There was a moment of falling and sprint and spinning, and then Freddy was back in the school. But not his school. It looked the same, but it felt different. His powers were tempered in some ways, and focused in others. The boy had gone for now, but other prey walked the halls. Some would be inconsequential, others would become his new favourites. All would fall before his claws. Awesome.